Cerniuk. I love that. That's a lot better than you Italians, Kevin. My goodness.
Cool. All right, Tanya, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Ty, you ready?
Absolutely.
All right, Michael, you ready? I'm just kidding.
Mike's ready.
Timeout. Tyler, who are we taking a timeout with today?
Oh, man, Kevin, this is a special treat, a little tasty treat we got on the docket today, man. We have Tanya Cerniuk, the country head of Adecco Canada, man. And Tanya, thanks for jumping on episode whatever it is of Time Out with Leaders now. I got to meet you about a month ago, and your energy, talking about hard rolls to ice wine, you had me at the difference between a hard roll and some like soggy bun or something. But I wanted to ask you first off, you get to pick what hat today, okay? So are we going with the beaver skin cowboy hat?
Ooh, that's nice.
Or are we going with the monkey straw today?
You know what? I'm more of the beaver skin monkey hat. That one's a lot more formal, but it still looks like you're having a good time.
Okay, that's what we're doing then. All right, Tanya Cerniuk said so. All right, Kev, fire away.
Tanya, we're sitting down for our first family game night. My family's coming over to your house. Tyler's family's coming over. What game are you picking off the shelf? What board game are we playing together?
Wow, that's a really good question because our family is big on board games. You know what? It's funny because my family would all fight with one another as to which game they were going to play because they're all good at a different game. And so I would say, honestly, I'm an old school traditional kind of gal, and I would say no to the board game, and I would pull out a deck of cards, and I would play a game that we call Bid Whist, which is every man for himself. And you've got it's basically a shorter version of the game Bridge. But it's a lot of fun, and you take score from 13 to 1. It takes about an hour to play, and let me tell you, it's a very humbling game because you think you're good, and then the next round you get knocked down. And you know, you get some chips, you get some nuts, you get a couple of drinks going, Coca-Cola for the kids, and we have a good time.
Okay, next question, Tanya. So if Adecco is playing a CODIS in a talent show this week, and it's a tie ball game, right? The stage is set, the microphone's up there. Tanya Cerniuk's up to take the cake for Adecco. What talent, and you don't even have to do this in real life, unless you really do. What talent are you just blowing the doors off and taking the W?
Well, I gotta tell you, it's almost like you gave this question to me before. And by the way, anybody who does a podcast with these guys, they do not give you anything in advance. You just gotta show up and make it happen. And so for me, I love this question because at our Adecco kickoff in January that we hosted in Canada, we did Adecco's Got Talent. And we had everybody bring their own act. So ACODIS, watch out because our teams came with their own acts. And I did an act, and I would probably recommend doing this against ACODIS, is I did an act that you don't have to have a significant talent in any one area. You just got to have fun on stage. So I would do a lip sync. And I would make sure that there was a lot of fun in it. And by the way, the one that I did in January was the one I used to perform on stage when I worked at a resort when I was 19 years old. And it was the Lion King. I just can't wait to be king. Woo! And we were all dressed up, and my CFO was that bird that just chirps, right? In Simba's face. And I was the excitable little lion. And let me tell you, we got so many snaps for that performance because we made it funny too.
That is awesome. Yeah, we're going to get to that cruise. So were you working on a cruise ship maybe? I always envied those people when they got to do all that cool stuff. So while you're dancing, do you have a go-to dance move? I'm going to a wedding in a couple of weeks, but what's your go-to dance move?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I mean, I'm a 90s nightclub kind of gal. And so, I mean, anything that that gets you up jumping and on the dance floor and twirling your hands up in the air and kind of getting other people with you, looking silly, but having a good time. And then everybody will want to come up on that dance floor and join you because they're not going to be intimidated. They're just going to know that they're going to have a good time with you.
Yeah. Yeah. When you play it cool on the outside of a dance floor at a wedding, we know you're not really that cool. You're uncomfortable in your own skin. So yeah, I am like first to the dance floor every single time.
Yeah, you got to let it go, right? The dancing in one place guy move doesn't always
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
You gotta let it fly, right? I was watching that Florida Gator documentary the other day, and the coach, one of his plays was let the SOB fly, and I was like, man, that is how I want to live life. And I probably do if you know me for 5 minutes or whatnot. But Tanya, my other question for you, and you are a treat, by the way. I don't even feel sick anymore. I feel a little flushed. My lips are a little like dry. I keep licking them. But if you got to meet the creator of the universe over a cup of coffee, what one question would you ask that creator of the universe?
Well, first of all, we're talking about a female, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the creator of the universe.
Three creators.
What would I ask the creator of the universe? Why? That's it.
I love that.
That's it. Mic drop. Why?
Boom.
Boom. All right, last of the funny questions. Then we're gonna get into the serious stuff about how you were lying Simba singing "Can't Wait to Be King." But before we get into that fun stuff, if you were to be on a game show tonight, right? Any of the game shows throughout the history of time, what game show are you or your family or your spouse? Like, what one are you getting on?
So again, I was a really little girl when this game show was on, but I'm gonna say The Price is Right.
Oh
yeah.
I love Bob Barker. I mean, he's in the Adam Sandler movie too. He just rocks. And you never know which game you're gonna get, and it's all about money. So for me, that's a nice game show.
Nothing against Drew Carey, but he ain't Bob Barker. That's what I'll say.
That's right.
He doesn't bring the heat like Bob.
No way.
Yeah, and Tanya, I had a Canada question for you before we get into your career and your path. What Canadian celebrity do you got gaga over up there? Like, is there one specific Canadian celebrity that you would just like to take out for a few drinks at a happy hour?
Yep. Ryan Reynolds. All the way.
That's a great
all the way, because he's got that witty charm,
Way up right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
That guy's fascinating. He owns like his own soccer team. That guy does just about everything. But
and he really still is Canadian. He's that nice Canadian guy,
Is it true you guys don't lock your front doors? Is that a thing?
Oh my gosh. Are we gonna get into that? And we live in igloos and take dog sleds to work and school? Is that what
I remember this 60 Minutes when I was a young kid, and they just compared the north and south of the Niagara Falls, and one side locked their doors heavily, and the other side, you could walk right in the front door of any Canadian's home.
Come
I had to
on,
ask.
Kevin. Come on. You've been here. Didn't you say your parents were from Canada?
No, I wish. No. They thought they were when they added a Y to my name, I think. Yeah.
I'm going to say it depends on the city. It depends where you grow up. I grew up in a small town, and we did not even close our door. We just had the screen. So it's true that can happen. But now I live in a big city. I mean, Toronto's got 6 million people. It's a different ball game, Yeah. So I think it depends where you grow up and what your community is. But I have to tell you, a lot of Americans come visit up here in Canada because we have a lot of good stuff going on. And the number one thing people say to me is, I can't believe how clean it is, and I can't believe how safe it is. That's and true. I'm always like, really? I feel like the US is clean. And they're like, yeah, you haven't been in my town.
Well, right on, I'll tell you. Well, hey, let's get into a little bit of your career here and just your journey. And we always like starting to ask. So you started at your college at York University, is that right?
I did. Yeah.
Okay. So before York University in high school, who was Tanya Cerniuk? How would you describe yourself before you hit the college scene?
Well, it's so funny because I do have a big story. I mean, my daughter has actually started grade 9 on Tuesday this week. And she was a lot like I was going into grade 9, very shy, believe it or not, very quiet, didn't really know who I was. Again, one of those things in elementary school, you get stuck with the same crew of people, and you just don't feel like you can be your authentic self. And then the beauty of going to high school is that you're with different people, and you can kind of just be who you want to be. And so for me, I went into grade 9 not really having anybody in my classes or on my lunches, just like my daughter's doing right now, and I'm really loving it. And I got to become me. And at the same time, I started working at that resort in summers. And both of those experiences, being in high school on my own, going to start a job at a resort where they put me on the mic, and I was scared. I didn't want to do any of it. And everybody just pushed me. I've always had that where people push me, and I feel very, 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 very fortunate that I have those people around me all the time. It just seems you can do it, go. And they don't give me a choice. And then I just became that social person. I think I was always high energy, but I got to actually do it, because it's funny when people silence your voice or when people try and push you down, you start to question your authentic self. So high school was a riot for me. I made so many friends. I worked every summer at that resort, 8 summers straight, actually, even during university. And I became the person that I am because I was pushed.
Do you feel like you've learned more about yourself during those times of like uncertainty, the unpredictability, like adversity, let's say?
Absolutely.
That's where you found your true
Yeah.
self. It was only when you fully tested the all of Tanya.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I mean, I was bullied in elementary school by my best friend, and you know, it was hard. I remember praying for a disease, and I remember telling my mom, and she's like, "What do you mean?" She's such a nice girl, and I'm like, "Okay." And so I just had to like suffer in silence. And then and you know what, it took me a long time to realize that, you know, even just being alone and going for lunch alone in business meetings, like 10 years ago, even, I was like, I got that old feeling, right? But I think that, you know, you learn to cope. And so it does make you stronger. And then you just kind of realize that, thank God, thank goodness for those experiences, because I do think it's one of the reasons why I'm always looking at, I'm trying to be humble in every situation, because as good as life can get, I felt that, right? And so I'm always going back to basics and saying, okay, but you know what, I'm grateful for this. Things can be real bad. And so I try not to, as you know, high energy personality, when times are really good or when times are really bad, I've learned to try to be neutral so that I can get through it all.
And it's like being more present, like you're saying, but being
Yeah.
alone sometimes. I mean, it's almost as if we're so afraid of being alone. You don't really have these opportunities to think. You know, it's like in that silence is really what we can find ourselves. And you said, "Oh my gosh," or change it to God, right? Is like is ultimately sometimes these experiences, when you're going through them, it doesn't feel like you're learning anything. You feel like, why is this happening to me? But
Mhm.
I've had a very similar experience to you, bullied in 7th and 8th grade, you know, and looking back, you know, over time, you can carry that with you subconsciously until you are aware, like, oh my gosh, this is why I do certain things. I just loved how you put that, because when did you come to that realization? Like, when did you look back on your past and say, oh my gosh,
You know, it's a
this?
really good question. And I think it was around the time that I had my first child. Um, isn't that weird? Isn't that weird?
Same. No, that's why I just like, yeah.
You know, and you want to know why I came to that realization? Because having a baby was one of the hardest things I ever did. And it wasn't, even though the pregnancy was easy and yeah, the birth was horrible. It wasn't that. It was that I had a tiny human that I had to look after, and my needs were in the background now. And I also used to only look at work as my only identity. And then I realized that I have more of an identity than just work. And because it was so hard to raise a tiny human and not sleep for 6 months and all that kind of stuff, I realized that I could do anything. But I also then looked inward and said, that was really, really, really hard. That was the last time something was really hard in grade 6, 7, right? But this was hard in a different way. And so I reflected on both of them, and I said, you know what, though? That was hard, but I learned from it, and I'm going to keep learning from it. And this is equally hard. And now what it propelled me to do was to push myself even harder and become more ambitious for my life.
And push you to find yourself. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Love that. Cool.
But it's
I
good
could
to
go on
have
for
those
days. I could go
reminders,
on for
right?
days, Tyler. I mean, she just said so many
I
things.
know, dude. I'm like, when you're talking, Tanya, I'm like, you know my buddy Kevin down here pretty well, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
We have a lot in
yeah.
common.
Yeah, it's just funny hearing somebody else go through. I think we're all going through this, you know. And I look back and I think sometimes workaholic, right, is what I would say. So, did you feel like you were going to work as your outlet, as your
Yes.
way to distract and numb yourself?
Yes. And just to give you, and I know you want to know about my career, but I mean, everything starts at the beginning, right? I had to look inward, and I grew up with two workaholic parents. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
My dad was the CEO of a hospital. and my mom ran a tourism organization and traveled the world. And so I grew up with seeing my parents with the briefcase on a Saturday morning, my dad at the dinner table. He'd close it when I came down the stairs and want to hang out. So they showed a good example of family life. My mom would work late at night and then different sleep in. But what I realized was that, and my parents are divorced. They got divorced when I was in my 20s because work became everything, right? And so it was a lesson for me because I have a tendency to do that, workaholism. And so I have a mantra, and it's 3 things that keep me sane. And that is, and maybe I'll ask both of you this question, try and think about who you are, what you're about, what your purpose is, your legacy, whatever it is. What are the 3 words that you would say? And I'll tell you my 3 words, and it's in this order: family, work, fun. That's what I'm about.
That I hear that, and I have one too, and I stole it from Matthew McConaughey's kid of all people. It's meet cool people and do cool things. Just keep it super simple, because I have a freaking wiring in my brain that goes obsessive, right? Like when a rec comes out, Tanya, on the West Coast, I can't go to sleep. I seriously, it's like if it comes out at 7 p.m. Central Time, which is 5 p.m. West Coast, I can't go to bed. I really can't. But if I just, for some reason, I have to do it, by the way, still to this day, which only is about an hour of a net cast, if you know what I mean. But yeah, mine's meet cool people, do cool things, from McConaughey's like 14-year-old son. And what's crazy is Kevin was mentioning, was it yesterday, Kev, where you said that Freud came up with like all his masteries at like what age? What was the age?
Yeah, it was Tyler and I were reading Meaning of a Man by Viktor Frankl, or Man's Search for Meaning. And the majority of this, his philosophies, he had at 16 years old.
Wow. And I have to say, you better post something on LinkedIn on your story there, Tyler, because that's #timeout with leaders.
What story?
Meaning you want to meet cool people and do fun things. That's what this podcast is, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly it.
That's why we started it.
Down for me too. Like if I think of that, it calms me down so much, even on a big meeting or a big networking event or doing something I don't want to do. I just say, let's just meet cool people and do cool things.
I love that.
Really works for me.
But I love Tanya, you're fun, right? I think sometimes, and Tyler put it so elegantly, and I've read it now a couple of times, and other philosophers or psychologists, Ty, so kudos to you, but never take yourself too seriously, because nobody else is. And and if you're taking yourself too seriously, it's an element of being self-centered that nobody else would agree on, right? And it's like, wait, no, why can't anybody see what I'm doing? Why can't anybody know? Why did they? But the ultimate thing that I learned is that you are in control, right? You control how you react to a certain situation or scenario. You always have that control. And it's when we relinquish that control, right, that you said, that's where I got into the people pleasing, right? Because I wasn't there for my own pleasure. I was there for everybody else's, because I required that external validation so much, because it wasn't coming from within.
I love that. I love that. And you hit on something too with you are in control, and you shouldn't blame others for how you react. And when I actually realized that more was, I don't know if you've ever done any EQ tests, the emotional quotient or emotional intelligence, but I did one about 10 years ago, and there's 5 different elements of emotional intelligence. And the one that I scored the lowest on was self-regulation. And of course, because I'm that high energy junkie and I have a face that you can read, like no matter what. And it is my authenticity. When I'm upset, when I'm unsure, when I'm happy, right? And what I realized was, especially if I were going to lead people, I needed to be better at self-regulating for them, not even for me. Like, yes, it's for me and it helps me be happier to be more self-regulated and neutral. But, when you lead people too, you want to make sure that in times of crisis or when things are going wrong, that you remain that level of self-regulation, so that you can, take the time to decide, make sure that you're not steering somebody the wrong way, making them think something, right? And then ultimately more people can get behind that, right? And it also helps me be happier.
And you're modeling, right? You're modeling behavior that you want other people to follow. Then they're not going to do it by you telling them and you modeling something
Oh my
completely
gosh, isn't
different,
that the
right?
truth?
And
Yeah.
if I was to ask you, because you've obviously climbed the ladder, you're working high up and at a deco today. Like, did you ever stop and really start celebrating yourself, like as you were making these accomplishments, or was that a challenge for you?
You know, it's funny when you were kind of alluding on, I knew you were probably going to ask me something about my career journey. It's funny because I believe it is a journey and not a destination. And if I look back, I think, okay, I did a lot, but I got so much more to do. So I almost feel like, is it enough? It's always not enough for me, right?
Mhm.
So celebrating, I'm a big believer in celebrating moments and milestones and points in time, right? And I do that at home where I'm like, let's celebrate this tonight and that tonight. I mean, we used to go out for a tax dinner, my family. Every time we submitted our taxes, we'd go for dinner, celebrate it, right? And so for me, it's funny. I actually celebrate other people though. And I'm probably guilty of not celebrating myself as much. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, no, I'm firmly in that camp. That's why I asked, right? Because if I'm celebrating myself, then I can be singled out and it brings back that bully trauma, right? Because now I'm on my own
Exactly.
island. Now you
It
can
just
pick
feels
on me.
weird.
But
Yeah.
everybody else, yeah, I'll celebrate your greatest day. I'll make you feel like $1 million, just like Tyler, right? But that's why I think the way that we're ultimately wired, and I'm trying to get better at it because, and looking back, Tyler and I have had a lot of conversations about this. Like we like to complete things, we like to know that we're adding value. And one of the most interesting things is looking back, it was always the journey. I had no idea where I was going, even though I thought I was in control and I
Right?
could predict the future. But honestly, looking back, I had no idea. So that it's really cool just to hear somebody else going through a similar experience and kind of obsessed with ourselves in a different way to really ultimately find out what makes us tick. How do we regain that control and stop with the codependency on others,
Mm-hmm.
so we don't stand out. But because it's okay to stand out and it's okay to have a light. So what
For
do you
sure.
love about business development? Like that's kind of the path that I think you worked up. It's where Tyler and I
Yeah.
came from.
It's
It's
The
where
best
you
route.
obviously had your start. I think you learn a lot about yourself too when you hear no all day. But what did you learn during your experiences as you first started into the sales world?
Well, it's interesting because again, like you kind of said yourself, you didn't know exactly what the path was going to be. You knew you were going to be on a path, but I didn't say, all I knew is I wanted to be in the business world. That's all I knew. And so I got a degree in marketing and I thought this is what I want to do. But what did I want to do? I wanted to be in front of people and I wanted to pitch. But I wanted to work for an ad agency. That's what I ultimately wanted. And I didn't get into an ad agency. I worked at a number of different roles in different industries, from the political sphere, even, believe it or not, to legal publishing and, tourism and you name it. And what I learned in those experiences, what was interesting in every single one is I was in marketing and they all pushed me into sales. So I didn't choose to go into sales. They were like,
Does anybody? No, I'm just kidding. Does any?
right? But I count my blessings that I was, you know why? Because especially as a new person joining the workforce, if you can establish yourself in business development or as a salesperson, wow, do you learn, because you learn to get rejected. It feels bad. Okay. I think the other thing that you learn is that there's only one thing that you're evaluated on, and that's your last sale. And if you're bringing in money. And I think the other thing is that's cool is you can make a lot of money very young.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel very fortunate to have had that working for the corporate world in sales and making a lot of money very young. And so it made me the person I am today. It wasn't what I wanted, but I'm so happy that I did it. But I think that also I knew it wasn't the only path for me. And I knew what I realized is the reason why I wanted to get into a P&L earlier in my career was I wanted to make a bigger impact on people. I wanted to not just salespeople, but all people. And I wanted the bigger purview. And so for me, there was a point in my career, early in my career, where nobody wanted to take a chance on me, to take me out of sales and put me there. And the reason why I was told was, you make so much money, and you are so successful that you won't even like this. And it's like, yeah, but you know, I decided. And so for me, but sales is always something I get, you know, that, what is that Godfather quote? You know, you get out, but they pull you back in. Someone's got to know that quote. My husband would be able to say it. Just when you think they out, they pull you back in. And that happened to me a lot in my career, pulling me back into sales leadership positions or anything to do with growth. And what I love about Adecco is that when I got here, I realized this was a sales first organization. And I've worked for other corporations where it was an operations first organization. And to work for agency world, it's about the sales, and it's a valued skill. And by the way, I take it with me everywhere I go. And I'm sure the two of you both feel the same way about sales.
Yeah, and I think we just got over the hump, me and Kevin, as a tandem. You know, I think this conversation was meant to happen, by the way, y'all.
This feels like divine intervention. Right?
This is fun. This is fun. You know, salespeople get a bad rap, right? That word sales. Until you like maybe finally conquer it, it feels pretty darn good. Was there a point in time where you were proud, Tanya, to be a salesman? Because that's what Kevin and I kind of struggle with. We used to say we're just this, and people like sales, right? We're like, no, but yeah,
you know who I felt like? The only person I was like, does everybody see me as Matilda's dad that rolls back the odometer? That's literally the view that I had of. I was like, this is how everybody views me.
Yes, there was. And every time they pushed me in, I didn't say this, and I'm sure you all said the same thing. Every time they said, you know, you should be in business development. I'm like, I don't want to be a used car salesman. I'm sorry. But used cars salesmen, by the way, my stepfather was in the motorhome business and he sold used. And by the way, he was amazing. And I realized that there's a lot of respect for anybody in sales, whether you're in car sales, whether you're in corporate sales, whether you're doing your side hustle in sales, right? Selling makeup or cosmetics or whatever it is. It's all, I owe so much respect to anybody that's in sales because it's hard. And so I would say the pivotal moment for me where I actually felt proud was when I got into the big corporate sales where these processes were 2 years long. And you had to meet, 10 plus stakeholders in those 2 years. You had to challenge them. You had to make them think differently. You had to take them. We call this thing in the sales process, the last phase, dream fulfillment. So once you kind of understand their outcomes and understand what motivates them and even understand their dominant buying motive, you get to the point where now you can show them what it's going to feel like when they work with you. And that's called dream fulfillment. And so for me, when I got to do the process brought out for that 2-year period, and then I would win and it would be big, like 10 million bucks. And, it just felt like, okay, this is cool. This is not just what everybody says about sales. And I feel like I can celebrate myself a little bit now.
Once you get there, it's amazing, right? But that journey to there, my goodness, it's like, why am I doing
it's hard.
this? But then, waking up out of bed with something like that in mind, it's pretty easy to be in a good mood.
Totally.
Like if I spill my OJ, it's okay. I can
or
buy
if you chip your tooth on a chip.
Or freaking veneer, and I owe the dentist $1,700. It's finally okay, because I woke up today with X, Y, and Z, bucko. It is my, and I'm, but by the way, guys, I just became like this not too long ago. I was really struggling, and Kevin used to be like, what are you doing? And I was like, man, I'm making cold calls for a rep. And he's like, you're not the rep? And I'm like, no, man. And he talked, it took him about 6 months, I think, I don't even know if he knew this, but he talked me out of it, virtual signaling, from Rochester to down to, I was up in Rochester at the time. But Tanya, I wanted to ask you, do you find fun in the unknown? Because traveling 50 miles somewhere to go to a networking event or whatever, and you don't know who's going to be there. There's a lot of unknown in that stuff. How do you deal with either deal with it or love it? I don't think there's much more you can do to be successful, but I just want to hear your take on the unknown, especially when it comes to biting off a chunk of an enterprise company to get your butt in there.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're all human, right? And I'd be lying if I didn't say that I didn't get those butterflies or those feelings of, oh my gosh, I'm gonna look like an idiot. I'm gonna fail. Again, my authenticity, while it's great to be me and I'm happy that I'm me, I know that the first impression of me can sometimes be different than who I am, right? People may think that perhaps this is fake. My energy is fake, for example. That's a comment I get a lot of times from people that get to know me, and then they say, can I be honest with you? When I first met you, I didn't think your energy was real. I think you put it on. And now that I know you, I realize that this is you in literally every part of your life. And I'm like, okay, so I know this stuff in the back of my mind. And I'm like, okay, yeah, so this might happen. But what I do is I just kind of get up and show up. And it's just something that I'm a big believer in affirmations. And I know it sounds corny, but if I'm scared of something, say starting a new job at a deco during the pandemic, not being able to meet someone in person, which is where I know I thrive, and not getting that for over a year, or going to a conference for the first time, not knowing a soul, which happens a lot when you're in sales, as you know, or going to a meeting where you're like, oh, I'm not super prepared, but I'm going to do it anyway. And again, I'm a big believer in be scared, but do it anyway. You know, just know the feeling, but also do what you can do to feel better about it, which is tell yourself, you got this. You got this, right? It's almost like fake it till you make it. I know we use that phrase a lot, but
I
it's
think that's
that
the ultimate
first 30
definition of faith.
seconds. Yeah.
It's like faith and belief in the unknown. And I love what you said about positive affirmation. I guess this is where I got stuck in my self-discovery journey, right? I could say an affirmation, but I didn't really believe it, I guess, right? Because I was so self-aware. I was so self-aware that I wasn't loving of myself. I didn't accept myself, you know? So I would say it and I'd be like, I don't really believe that. How do you quiet that internal naysayer? Because you kind of talked about her. I have mine named. His name is Mark. So when Mark comes out, tells me I'm not too good enough.
Have you read the same book as me? It's
no, yeah, maybe. Which one was it? I've read about
your Gremlin.
No, I do not know that. But
Gremlin.
I will add that to my reading list.
Yes, and you know what's cool about it? It's a quick
All right,
read,
what's your internal naysayer?
Yeah, this one even has pictures, so it's really good.
Okay.
One of my internal naysayers, they say to name it. They say to name your gremlin. So it's so funny you say that. I have a gremlin called Busybody, where I gotta be busy all the time, and my brain never shuts off, and it caused me to not be in the now. Like, how many times have I been working in my basement in the morning, and I'm like, I have my phone there, and I'm like right in the middle of a jumping jack, and I'm like, oh my god, I have to do this, I have to do that, this person's texting me, whatever, and then I've got a billion things on my mind that I have to get done, and I'm not present. And also the whole feeling of I'm not enough unless I can tick off a list. I don't feel valuable or like I've achieved anything unless I can tick off a list. And I had to really call it out. And when I got those feelings, I would have to, God, I'm still working on it, but I would have to kind of come up with coping mechanisms. So one of them is I do write a list every morning. But then I have a quadrant list on what's important and strategic, what's not important, and not strategic, you know what I mean? And then it's helped me compartmentalize. And also when I'm with my family or whatever, I really just, I put my phone down and I put it away because it's a distraction. And so I don't know how you do it, Kevin, but that's
no. I love that you said the word distraction because there's so many of them. I mean, you could pick there's so many, right? And work was one. I got a question though, because this is what I've been pondering too in my own self-discovery. So this might be a selfish question just for me, but that I'm not enough unless I'm doing something or checking something off a list, right? Do you think that comes from sales, right? Because then we understand our worth. Like, and do you think that's from sales, or do you think it was something before we got into sales, right? Then that's where I'm trying to. I'm like, did sales warp me to think that my only value? Did I actually start to believe that what did you do for me today, and I didn't care what you did yesterday? Like, what have you found in that? Because I couldn't agree more, and I think that's the same thing. I felt very low self-worth when I wasn't adding value, and I wasn't adding value if I couldn't clearly associate to a metric or a performance number?
You know, I'm going to say that it's the reason we're good salespeople.
All right.
But I'm not going to say that we got it from sales. And again, I'm only talking about my lived experience. It could be, right, Kevin? It could be the reverse. I think that you want to hire people with a high sense of urgency, highly competitive. I mean, we do this personality assessment to make sure that we can, you know, get high D personalities, high like disc, high I personalities. I can tell you guys have that, right? So there's that. But I think also, I believe that I think it's nature and nurture. I think we're born a certain way. We're born with a disc profile, for example, personality profile. The only thing that changes your personality drastically is really big tragedy, really big. Okay. But I would say it's also nurture. So I think it's how you grow up as well. And I think it usually happens before you get into the workforce. So that's my personal belief.
And I love how you said that with your parents, you know, it's like the same thing, like alcoholics drinking in front of their kids. They're seeing them constantly hit the bottle, you know, and then subliminally they're like, oh, maybe. But like you mentioned with workaholic, I mean, that's the house that I grew up in too. I got to see my dad going to work on Saturday. So I was just, maybe we saw that blueprint, and that's what I started to realize. I was starting to live that blueprint, even though I was not the architect behind it. What, and that's where I said, I loved how you said present, right? Because that is such a big word. And I think that was one of the greatest lessons that I learned when I had a child, right? How present that they are, because they're not worried about what they did yesterday, and they do not care what's about to happen tomorrow, or even in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes. They are really the most present that I've ever seen, because their mind isn't busy. So to your point.
And I share the same stuff with y'all's parents as well. You know, my dad coached high school football in Texas, so we weren't allowed to talk to him on Friday, you know, and if he only won by like a touchdown, it wasn't good enough. So, and then it took me forever to find a career path to just outwork people, because it's just in me, you know, and it bugged me so much, you know, and that's why when I came over to this industry, Tanya, I was like, wait, I just have to move faster than you on the recruiting side, you know, and I just thought I can go till 10 at night, because, you know, the decision makers, candidates are still awake, you know, and if I'm not at this number, by golly, I'm not excited or, you know, satisfied. But, and you were talking about, Tanya, also, to be your mind racing and stuff. And for me, tackling the unknown for a long time was the only way for me to be at peace at night. Like, because if I didn't tackle the unknown, holy smokes, it was just like freaking squirrels just chirping, because I knew I was a big pansy on not what I meant, on what I should have done in a way. But man, I don't know. I just, I've learned a lot. And Tanya, you are awesome, by the way. Me and Kevin have done this a lot. And my goodness, you are coming out with some flamethrowers right now. So I guess, Kevin, I mean, you want to keep it on the journey right now, or where do you want to go, Tanya? I think the floor is yours right now.
How do you take your lessons, Tanya, and apply it to the team, right? I think we've had these traumatic experiences, or maybe these negative experiences, let's say, right? The bullying, because we share now that perspective, and I think I'm hearing what I hear in myself and you is we never want somebody else to go through that experience. So how has that made you a better leader? Like, how are you adding what you took from your lessons and your journey, and ensuring that you're also telling people, hey, there's oncoming traffic over there. You might want to do this differently, and here's why. How have you taken those lessons and applied it to your leadership role?
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I'll probably answer that in two different ways. One for my daughter, for example, and then one in business. And as my daughter was growing up, she's 13 now, going to be 14. I was always conscious of, grade 6, you know, what's that going to do for her just in a practical sense, right? And I always tried to raise her to make her own decisions and to not worry about what anybody else thinks. And I also think that I am that person now that is a model for her. And so again, just living by example for her has helped her. And I'm very proud of her in grade 9, how she's embraced it. And I see her going on the same path as me, which is great. I think that for the corporate world or people that, you know, who come to me for coaching or mentorship, it's interesting because I actually am so grateful for that experience early in my childhood that I only realized later in life that I was grateful for it. because you want to go through adversity. It makes you stronger, right? So would I want to coach somebody so that they don't have to go through adversity? Sure, I would. But I also know that people come to you with already their baggage. And so it's how you kind of say, hey, remember that experience? You know, remember how hard that was? Now look at you after that experience. And one of the things we actually did at our conference in January was, I have a director that just knows a lot about me, and she always wants me to be authentic. And so I talked about that experience in January, and we actually put our conference and our whole mantra for the year in Adecco Canada is get comfortable being uncomfortable, because we know that if we are uncomfortable and we do it anyways, even if it's not good, it's going to get better, right? And so even if you're in a situation where you're being made to feel uncomfortable, that's out of your control, try and think about how you can use that, right? And think about how it is going to make you stronger in the long run. And it might take some time, but you're growing, right? You're not growing unless you're changing and being challenged.
And isn't it cool, Tanya, how you can smell your old self in people? Like just the little things they do sometimes, even if they're like really not doing the work, I can be like, bro, you're really not working, are you? Or you're really, because I've been with people that, or myself has even used that dang line, you know, oh, I'm too busy, and you can just tell that they haven't like gone through the gauntlet at all during the day,
yes.
You know, and it's like, dude, you should look a little different right now if you're really doing what you're supposed to be doing, man. Like, how do you know this? I'm like, you know, keep it between us, man, but you're not doing anything. You know? And I kid you not, they're like, what did I say to tip you off, man? I can smell you through this Zoom call, bro. You know?
That's a salesperson thing. We know.
It's like those weird words. You're like, dude, you are not getting your butt kicked on the phone by any means. Coming, asking me where we're going to eat for lunch today. Or you're volunteering to take out the trash. No, man. But tell you, I wanted
We're
to ask
eating
you, like,
today. That's what I used to say. We're having lunch. What are we having lunch for?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, right? We were all raised by baby boomers, right? And so we were all a little bit abused children. So we kind of just like don't eat lunch. Like we just learned that behavior, right?
That's an extra
have
hour.
it delivered. You know, I love it, Tanya. And being the country head of Canada, of one of the largest staffing firms on this blue ball we're floating on, do you ever battle like not being in the weeds anymore? Like, because if numbers are down, let's just say, right, and you can't really like get down in the grit of things, does that bug the crap out of you? Because I mean, I do know how I would get past it if I ever get to your level, and I learned that from my baby, my 20-month-year-old. I told her to go put something somewhere the other day, and she did it. And I'm like, if you know how to do that, I could probably go hands off if I got to your level someday, Tanya. But is it hard for you to sit back and watch the party go down or up?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I have a lot of mentees, and it's one of the things that they struggle with as they're climbing up the corporate ladder is we just recently did this thing in our leadership team and borrowed it from Global, which is awesome. But it's we open up the meeting this way, is the concept of being in the dance or being on the balcony, right? And once you get to a certain leadership level, you actually are less and less in the dance and you're more and more on that balcony. I think certain personalities gravitate to just the balcony or gravitate to just being in the dance. And it's interesting because earlier in my career, one of my bosses was amazing and helped me realize that it wasn't all about what I was doing, but it was how I was bringing people along and coaching. And I think there's a couple things here. So I think you got to lead from the front, but you can't keep your eye off the forest, meaning the strategy, right? Because you need people to come along with you. So you got to get your hands a little bit dirty, but then you got to come back out and lead from the top. Like you got to be able to have the bird's eye view. And one of my mentors said to me, as you grow in leadership, you need to keep in the back of your mind that you need to double your capacity every 3 years. So what does that mean? That means that you can affect more doing less, okay? Working smarter. So what that means is, and in a clear example, I remember the moment that this other boss said to me, I get it, you're in there with your team, you're doing everything, but you could be way more effective if you plan your thinking time. And so one of the things that I do is I block time in my calendar to think. Okay. I don't put a list in either. I just put it in. and I make sure that I think. Now we as people all have different times we think. Like when I wake up in the morning and get in the shower, I get good ideas, or when I'm working out, I get good ideas, and I always keep my phone and write those ideas down. But it's also when I'm doing nothing. And he used to say to me, I had a downtown office, and I would literally, Tanya, book an hour and stare out the window. I'd be like, are you kidding me? And he's like, yeah, that's why they pay me the big bucks. And you know what? It's been amazing, because if you take a step back and you take that time, you come up with a really great idea, and then you set it in motion, and you can enable your organization, and then everybody goes, right? And then that's your capacity building.
Dude, I love that. And that happened. I finally learned that. My wife is a guru with these books out here, I tell you, from the choppers to the you name it. And the subconscious, right, is a new facet to me. And oh my God, it's like free work. You know, like right? Literally, I'll be driving down the road, and I'm getting better at this because I'm a gunslinger. You know, don't worry about the beaver skin cowboy hat over here. But just gunslinging all day, and I've gotten a little bit better at the subconscious. Have you done any studies on the subconscious at all, Tanya, or read about it? Or just
I haven't. I mean, I don't know, Kevin, you have, but I haven't done any studies on the subconscious. But it's there, eh? Like it's there, and I know it's there. And funny little story, and I know we're coming to the end of our time, but the reason I know it's there, and this is personal, but I'm going to share it anyways. Both my parents have one sleepwalks and one sleep talks, because we're so in our head. Okay, we are so in our head, and my subconscious never stops. Okay, so whatever's happening is still happening, and I don't even know what I'm doing until I kind of can wake up in the middle of it sometimes. But my husband always says, he's like, I don't know, just a funny one. It's like in your sleep, you're like, yes, we can do that. Yes, absolutely. Just schedule a time. We'll make that happen. So it's just like, I've got worse ones that I'm not saying today, but they are there. So your subconscious. And this is why you have to look inward and call out those gremlins and separate your time and make sure you're present in the moment, or that inner voice and that subconscious is going to haunt you as you get older. It's going to get worse. So you got to deal with it now.
That's the definition of consciousness, right? It's to be able, Tyler, in the moment, to call out when your subconscious is thinking or speaking, because it's always happening. It's your ability to call it out. And I have only found it to be successful, like naming that doubter, that naysayer, Mark, right? I've only been, until I put it into words, until I kind of get it out of my own head, then I can deal with it, and then you laugh at it, right? And that's really helped me with the fear components, right? What am I actually afraid of? And then you look at what you're actually afraid of, and you're not really afraid of it at all. It's just an emotion. It's a symptom. You're kind of in these cycles and these loops until you kind of correct some of those behaviors. Or I told you, Ty, I had a lot of wounds, right? They should have became scars by the time, but I was still talking about stuff in 7th and 8th grade, but they were still wounds. I didn't let them heal to look back on them differently today at the man that I am today, instead of that 7th grader or that 13-year-old or the 26-year-old, Perspective is everything, but now looking at through today's perspective, I was realizing that I was still making decisions as if I was 13 or if I was 7, right? It wasn't as the man that has gone through all these experiences, like you said, the trials and tribulations of life, and realizing that we can conquer those. I can conquer anything, And here I am second guessing myself, because I think high performers like the three of us, I come with a lot of trauma. You work in these large organizations, and Tanya, you and I had these ideas. We're the dreamers, right? We're like, hey, you say you want to get there, but you don't want to change anything. But here's all the ideas that I have to actually get to where you say you want to go. Well, we don't want to do that. And then you'd sit in a meeting, and all of a sudden they're regurgitating your idea back to you. And you're like, wait a second, I thought that was such a bad idea 2 days ago, but now it sounds like it's your idea. Oh, okay. And that's where I think I needed to heal from that too, because constantly second guessing myself, and I think the three of us put higher expectations on ourselves than we do anybody else,
But it's beautiful to have those second guesses, and listen, I have not mastered anything, Kevin. I don't want you and Tyler to believe I've mastered all of it and overcome it all, because I get triggered. We all get triggered. We just get better at at managing through the triggers, right?
And that's living. I just want to be in the present. You know, I don't want to be worried about my past and trying to predict and control my future. That's where I get lost, you know, and that's, to your point, being present is something that I'm really trying to be more cognizant of, because I don't want to get to my deathbed at 96 and saying, what the hell did I do? So really start with the end in mind. Like you were saying earlier, Tanya, that's how I've lived my life. You know, what do I want? Where do we want to be? Give me your biggest dream, and I'll be the dream weaver, right? I'll tell you exactly how we're going to get there and how we're going to solve your problems and achieve that definition of success that you've put out there. So this has been awesome. This is not at all where I thought this conversation was going to go, but the reason it's great, Tanya, and the reason I think everybody's going to run through a brick wall through you is how organic and raw you are, how you are stepping into your own purpose and authentic self. I wrote down earlier, I've realized more and more today as a society, I feel like directness and like Brene Brown, vulnerability, sure.
Yeah.
I think it is a superpower, but there's now a new element of being direct, right? And I think people are really enjoying that. And it's something that I get more confident with by the day, you know, but it only comes with self-love and self-care that, hey, I can say what I want. You're in control with how you're going to control or react to that situation.
100%, 100%. And you know what? I think it's the generations that have helped us too, because I alluded to the boomers where you couldn't be your authentic self and you couldn't tell the truth and you couldn't be too direct and all this, get a tiptoe. And, you know, I mean, I'm tail end Gen X getting into Y, but then, you know, Gen Z's coming in. Gen Z wants transparency. Gen Z is direct. Gen Z doesn't
what all of us want, and that's why we're like, they're crazy, right?
Right? So this reverse mentorship is working on me too. It's like they're teaching us now, right? It's the right way to be. And you know what? I am direct, and I had to like squash that. And now I get to be my authentic self. And you know what? Wouldn't you rather know the truth? I mean, absolutely. Be kind is always my mantra. You know, be honest but be kind, right? And
you're vulnerable enough to share your intention, though. That's the difference. Like, they know it's coming from the best place. If they think it's coming from a bad place, we're always going to get defensive, you know. But
yeah, totally.
Yeah, your energy that people think, and Tyler, I've heard you say the exact, when she said that, I was like, oh, I've heard Tyler say the exact same thing. They're always like, what do you do, Ty? Like, how do you get this energy? Where's this infinite source of energy come from? It's hilarious.
I love it. I've had so much fun with you two today, and I feel so grateful to have spent this hour or so with you. And, you know, I do believe that everything matters in life. And it's funny, just the last thought, I do feel like we don't put enough time into meeting new people and to making those connections a priority, even if they're just people you just meet. Like, for example, Tyler and I met. And I can tell you that every good thing that's ever happened to me in my career has been because of a chance meeting that other people wouldn't have put the time in to say yes to.
That's powerful.
Well, it takes one person sometimes, right? Yeah. And you never know. You know, it happened to me just last week, and I was like, oh my goodness. But man, Tanya, you've been a treat. I tell you what, I knew this. I prepared Kevin, man. Like we've had a lot of leaders on here, and I was like, this is going to be really good. And I'm glad you stuck around for an hour with us here on Timeout with Leaders, Tanya. And Kevin, you have anything else to say? Because I am good. I'm about to probably go lay down and chug some more OJ.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to my thinking. But this was awesome. Thank you so much for being yourself. I think it's inspirational for everybody else to rise to that occasion, you know, and I have no doubt that we're going to continue to stay in touch after this. I think this is really awesome.
We are. I saw your LinkedIn come in already.
Yeah, while we're interviewing, I was like, all right, this lady I need to connect with, because yeah, we're walking in the same boots in the same mile right now.
That's right. So let's not make this a one and done. All right.
Cool.
We'll talk soon. Stay connected.
Okay.